Thank you.
Thanks for the reminder. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And there will be, we tried to wrap up this meeting within 2 hours, so we don't want to burden everybody. But the point of this is kind of catch up with what has been happened with each unit. And if you have any questions, comments, if you want to discuss about the discourse and the curriculum itself and the research topic, it should be we should feel free to just jump in and have some really interesting discussions. But bear in mind, we don't want to extend this more than 2 hours. Yeah. But if some discussions are really boosted up, we are very happy to hear that. We'll note it, and we are going to invite everybody in another event that we are organizing in October. All right. Here I want to just say thank you for everybody. So these are our participants. We had 43 students. Thank you everybody for your fantastic job. We also had a fantastic group of tutors. I really want to thank all our tutors. Let's give them a clap. Yeah, really well done. Thank you. Thank you for a fantastic job, for really a tremendous amount of effort and guidance. And I want to thank all the committee members, Jin Seok Chaewon and Daesong, for really helping us on a lot of different aspects. Yeah, and Hanjun and Sina for also a lot of administrative aspect. And June, thank you for overhead of everything. Thank you very much. And we had also Ningwei have been also helping us checking things, collecting files, yeah, and recording. So thank you very much. Yeah, so we had different events happen during the different public events. We also had first day of Q&A session with unit meetings. We had open lecture by unit 1 and 2, and then unit 3 and 4. And we also had unit 1 opened up their invited guest lecture. And then we had midterm crit by unit 1 and 2, and 3 and 4. And this is the final jury, and then the closing event, which is today. We also had all different parallel sessions, yeah, because of a lot of different reasons. We thought this was the best choice. Yeah, and some screenshots, some highlights from different days, no particular order. It was screenshot by different tutors and June, and yeah, so these are some highlights. So there were so many different things have been happening, really interesting and nice research and images, and yeah, great job everybody. So from some lectures, presentations, tutorials. Awesome. So many images. Nice. Yeah, so finally, before I invite the tutors, I want to add some more announcements. And maybe June, you want to jump in, feel free. Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah. And we want to really, really important announcement is the supercrit, because I particularly couldn't see everybody's work. Yeah, and we would love to gather everybody in one event and have some more extended discussions and your presentation of your project, selected projects. So We are going to have a super crit and symposium on 16th of October, and we would love to invite everybody to join in. So please note this date, and we really hope all the tutors can join in and join our discussion and yeah, share your work. Yeah, it's going to be a bit more extended version of today's, and there will be also a shared project from few years of our social algorithms research project that's also shared by also our committee members as well. June, do you want to add something about this?
Not really, it's okay, yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah. And make sure your file is submitted to our Google Drive. And I know maybe not many of you are using maybe InDesign, but we want to keep your high resolution images, raw images as much as possible. So please do not hesitate to submit some kind of raw separated images. You can upload a folder of images and PDFs. Yeah, but your final presentation will be one PDF, and we encourage you to submit an InDesign package as well. So we keep all the links and original images of your own production. And if you have any videos, please save them as also MP4 format. So many of you already submitted, but please double check, and Yingwei is going to double check for us. So do stay tuned for the announcement. And there's this thing. Let me just share this. Sorry, share this survey link with everybody. Can somebody? So we made a small survey, and we want everybody to do it. This is because AA is going to issue you an official transcript. So we need to make sure that your full name is correctly spelled, and it's as per your passport and everything. So you want to give us your full name as per how you want to appear in your transcript. So that's the official document. So please do our survey. Let me share this link.
I'll do it in the chat room.
I just shared to the chat.
So, okay,
yep.
Thank you. Thank you. So in the survey, you will find the place where you can put your name, surname, and name. And you can also put your Instagram ID so we can tag you in the future, and some other logistics that we are going to mention now. So the recordings will be uploaded to our YouTube playlist, and an email of a Google Sheet will be shared with you in few days. Yeah, when we have everything a bit more organized. So it's going to be shared with you, and it's going to be available for you to watch for around a month. So by end of August, you can still watch it. And we want everybody to make sure that the images is produced or shared by any lecturer. If that's not your own production, please do not share them or reproduce them or publish them. So if it's your own production, that's okay. That's your own image. But if it's somebody's face, somebody's photo, or some lecturer's image, it's not very good to publish it or reproduce it through screenshots. So please do very careful about reproducing them, because nowadays we're sharing all the recordings, and all files are open to you. So be aware of that. And if your own images that you want to publish it more officially, then you have to properly credit it. You have to properly credit that is produced in a business console, and you have to mention everybody engaged in your team and your tutors and everything. So if it's something more official, you can feel free to consult with us, any of us, your tutor or any of us in the committee. Will help you to help you and direct you how to credit your images more properly. Yeah, so be aware of the usage and publication of your images. Yeah, so next is that I would love to invite each tutor to present and share. Not really presenting, but like really share with us what has been going on in the unit, and then we can have a brief discussion and commenting time. And please note that our next big event upcoming is on 16th of October. Please note this date. Looking forward to seeing you there again. But yeah, I would love to then introduce Albert. But anybody want to add something before I pass my mic to Unit 3 tutors? No? Okay.
No, I think Laura can start.
Yeah. Great. Laura or Casey? Case.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
Yes.
cool. I'm sorry. I'm just,
no problem.
you know, it's late. Yeah, I'm in my car, but that's not a problem. I just had to charge my phone. So, what to say about Unit 3? That was a really good time. I really enjoyed it, and I really, Laura and me both really enjoyed the students, and we had a really good time. And I thought we had a pretty successful final crit today. It was really interesting to hear what people had to say. I think what we're going to do real quick is just go through some of the highlights of the process and some of the thinking around how it got done, and then show some stuff from people's final projects. And I guess open it up to questions. Does that sound like a good thing for us to do?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Well, I feel like we've talked about it a couple times to the group, but just for the sake of reiterating, I think what we were really trying to do was create a whole project from start to finish that had both a compelling visual element that was fueled by machine learning, as well as kind of a compelling narrative. And I think that we started with the narrative and we finished with the CycleGAN and the intelligent agents. But part of the workshop we hope that would be successful is just the understanding of that process and kind of seeing how to use CycleGAN in particular as a tool for sketching or iterating, and that you could use it as well as a narrative device to kind of like create speculations about the way the world could be, about the way the city could be. And we did this through infrastructure. We chose as the system, mostly because I think working at site, working from top down with satellite views, and we were just also really interested in scale, to be perfectly honest with you. Just like, how can we start to think about things at scale? And infrastructure is a great place to start for that. So Laura's sharing the slides and I'm not. Laura, could you go to the next one? So we started with kind of introducing everyone to the world building process that is a workflow that me and Laura have been developing for a while. And it starts with this kind of brutal estimation, this rough math, this kind of idea that as the future of cities is in a lot of ways quantifiable. That there's a huge numerical component to the way in which we look at problems of scale, and we wanted to kind of introduce that as a concept and as a tool for researching. So once they got their heads around a system that they were interested in, we pushed them to say, like, okay, let's have fun with this, and let's think as wild as we can about what it could look like and how it could work. And those two things could not be inseparable, but they were also very flexible and malleable, given the fact that, what we were trying to create was a sketch, an idea that, would be provocative. So we did that through a couple different ways, but the main way we started was with diagramming and giving kind of physical representation to these numbers. Like, how do we begin to wrap our heads around them, and complicated workflows? And we really try to embrace complexity, and to constantly, I think after day 3, on day 3, I think I introduced the idea of opposition research. We talked a lot about bias, about where that information they had collected had come from, what could be gleaned from it, what was missing. In fact, we had a couple projects, I think, that grew out of this opposition research, where they thought one thing, they were encouraged to go look at another. And of course, this process, I feel, is analogous to any sort of data set creation, whether it be a set of graphs, or whether it be, kind of baking in the ideas of bias within data sets as we move forward into the machine learning component. So we also get to generate some fun looking graphs. And I don't know, maybe I'm the only person that really loves the aesthetics of diagrams. I just, really enjoy them. And as such, I had a good time working with the students, trying to, tell a story with lines, as opposed to with words, or with, the typical, what is it? The axiometric, and the site, and the plan, and the what's the elevation, and just like a different way of looking at systems level. So we went through that, and it helped students kind of understand what the things that they were going to be using the machine learning for, right? Like, how does this inform the site mutation? You've made this provocation, you've asked a question, you've posited an answer to that question. Now go design it. Let's see it through to the end. And it's an ambitious ask to say, like, come up with a world, come up with an idea about something you don't know, and then visually represent it using tools you've never used. Those are the data sets. And this is, some of the things anyone who's worked with CycleGAN knows. It's a monster of a GAN in terms of its finickiness and its particularities. So they went through these mutations. They did a lot of them. I mean, I think they were pretty much training from day 3 up until the last second. We're training and splicing images back together. And this is kind of the boot camp part of the machine learning, where you just start to understand folder structures, errors. One of the things me and Laura had talked about that we were super interested in, and I'd love, someday maybe the students will let us know, was introducing them to the Colab, just to the notebook as a tool. Whether we use Colab, but whether you use a Jupyter notebook, or whatever that format is that you stack your code in, how you find pieces of code when you need them, how do you find where these algorithms are kept, how do you get them onto a Colab, how do you run them? Understanding that is probably one of the largest parts of this site mutation process, because the idea is that if you can learn it with this Colab, you should be able to go out onto the internet and find all the other Colabs for all the other GANs, and begin your own practice and exploration of machine learning from, the kind of angle that me and Laura use it. So after they did the site, we got into the intelligent agents. So this was the third and final output of the workshop, and it's all about constraints. Constraints and rules in systems. And it's also a narrative, it's very narrative driven, in that it's asking this question, like, who is the user of this thing? Or what is the unit, what is the metric of this system that you've designed? And how can we, simulate its behavior on this site that you've now mutated? This one right here, the walking windmill, was, it's such a great idea for a lot of reasons. One, because it's an amazing animation, but it was a very specific kind of answer to an actual really, really important problem related to wind harvesting and curtailment and battery storage and all the kinds of things that go with these propositions of moving to renewable energies. And it was a fun way to play out a very specific kind of world that the student was interested in exploring. After, I think we have some more images of this. Then we start to chart pathways. And I think in the unit, which was really cool, was the users went all over the place at every scale. Like some people were measuring sludge and trash by the the ton. Some people were measuring energy by the gigawatt hour. Some people were tracking snails and their life cycle growth through some people were tracking manhole covers in the city. There were just all kinds of different ways to attach these agents to the actions. And they made some really interesting animations, which I thought were super successful in my opinion. I hope others agree. But as you can see, we started with a very complex idea, and we started to layer these different workflows on top of them to create a narrative that was capable of supporting a complex idea. To say, whether or not you could, just read them off the book, that's well, we can talk about that some other time. But I think in terms of like a very bespoke approach to image making, it generated, I personally think this image is amazing. And when you get deep into it and understand that it's an evacuation route for it's the evacuation route for a risk management scenario around small modular nuclear reactors in the city of Seoul. So how do just taking the one question, how do people get out if there's a problem? Just a specific question, with an answer that generates the story of this diagram. And this shows all of it labeled. I think that's the extent of what I have to say. I don't think Laura can talk, but I'm sure if you throw questions in the chat, she can answer. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you mind keep on sharing? Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
I'm sorry if I talk fast.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know I speak for Laura when I say we had a really good time and we really enjoyed our students, and I hope that they got a couple laughs out of it and learned something in the process. Oh yeah, see, there's Laura.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess we'll find out sooner or later. But I was really happy with the output, and I thought our final review went really well, and I think the jury really responded to it, and so that's my impression. I'd love to hear others.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, and I really appreciate the fact that you really also pushed it to a design proposal, really trying to go through the entire process of finding a problem, but not really problem, analyzing the question, the let's say problem, yeah, and try to also provide an answer from a very individual perspective. Yeah, and I think that walking windmill is super cool. Yeah, and you really went down to really design up a machine that is very local but also really urban. Yeah, because you really have to deal with the walkable areas and all these constraints about working with the movable machines, right? So I think that's like coming up to that machine design, you had to go through all these like big questions about urban space and bigger infrastructure problem. I think it's really valuable study. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's such great. I mean, the reason we like that project is it's well executed, but it's also really emblematic of the problem that he was interested in. He had the constraints of a historic place with a beautiful historic view. He had the constraints of wind itself, which is an inconsistent variable. and it changes, and it has all these changes, and those changes are constantly, there's new challenges in wind collection are always happening, especially when climate is moving in these ways. So like, instead of building something stuck in the ground that can only work part of the time, his answer was to make something that could adapt and move with his specific resource that he was trying to harvest. And it might look crazy, but after he came up with it, he was able to identify a precedent. There are people with windmills, they're moving them, maybe not on walking spiders, but as one of our jurors suggested, if you could move a windmill 3 times a year, if you could optimize its output by even 25% more efficient for that windmill, you multiply that at scale at a city, and suddenly you've got an actually very interesting solution. We already have the roads, like, maybe you could do that. I don't know, that's for an engineer, but like, it's a great idea to just to get your brain moving around how you might adapt. Because, mutation, I know somebody says that, like, mutation is unexpected. You're like, well, I don't know. I mean, sometimes we design mutations by accident, through these kind of generative tools. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I also really like the fact that you talk about narrative aspect. Yeah, because it certainly creates different stories about how you will live in the future, right? If you have this kind of addition. So yeah, I think it's really important for us to also discuss the impact of whatever we're designing. So I think that aspect, yeah, I really appreciate. Yeah,
cool.
Let's see if we have any other comments from any tutors or students.
I have one comment, and thank you for all really hardworking with your tutors and our students in Unit 3. And I really like you guys set up the initially diagram, like a first idea from the student, each developed idea, and then you start from those things to generate or think from data set in order to maybe mutate in the site. So I think that has a really power of whole week, I think. So it makes kind of strong relationship as a narrative way from the first to the end, I think. So thank you very much. And actually, I need to maybe see a little bit more later on how you set up data set for the cyclogram, maybe from the diagram, because I did miss some final presentation today. Yes.
I think I probably didn't explain that very well, and I'd be happy to if you want to, but we could also show that to you at some other point, depending on what you'd like to do.
Yeah, I really want to see that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Yeah, also we can discuss that in the Supercrit, right? You will join us, right?
Or maybe second workshop or something, just for that.
Well, I appreciate it. That's very kind.
Awesome.
I also want to hear from the Unit 3 students, how they thought about it at the beginning, how they went through, and how they feel about it now.
Yeah, share with us some experience.
Actually, I was at Unit 3, and it was such a pleasure to learn from Case and Roa. And what was really interesting about this unit was that I thought that machine learning and architecture are different in different areas. So I was wondering how could they join each other and make synergy. And I think the narratives that we learned from architecture were well absorbed in machine learning, and by having this narrative on machine learning, I think we got the good results that you are trying to make. And so it was really fun to join this unit. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very well said. I'm really happy to hear that the technology is not really apart from architecture. Yeah, and that I think you kind of grasped that. I think I'm really happy to hear that. Good job.
Laura is keep responding to what he says on the chat room.
Yeah, we are listening to you, Laura.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Park. We had a lot of fun working with you guys too.
We can also have some questions from other unit students, if you have, or other tutors.
It's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's very overwhelming to digest everything. Yeah. Also,
Sure.
let's say from students' point of view.
Yeah, I mean, we just spent 9 days trying to convince them of the and we learned a lot too. We learned a lot about how to communicate complicated ideas ourselves. We were making decks all night long, trying to think of examples.
Yeah, but really great job and very clear agenda. You set it up. Like all these parts are very established and really appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you, Case and Laura, for your fantastic workshop curriculum and also all Unit 3 students. Great job. Yeah, we can move on, but if you have to leave, Case and Laura, you are free to leave, but we also appreciate some comments, so we would love all our tutors can stay. Please be with us. Yeah, but yeah, I understand if you need to leave. Yeah,
well,
but
we're around if you need us.
Yeah,
they got questions.
We would love to hear your comments on other units' work. So yeah, it would be great. Cool.
Thank you
so much. Thank you. Yeah. We can move on to Unit 4, and we are going to go a reverse order today. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Right.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Can everyone see it? Okay.
Yes.
So we try to tackle this question of untypical encounter, which will become clearer as the presentation goes on. So we started with this concept of typical architecture that is basically architecture that can be placed anywhere without context, and this becomes like a typical everywhere in the world, basically. And it started with this idea from a series of photography by this guy called Eberhard from Switzerland. And he basically went around 32 different hotels and took pictures of the bedroom and the view outside the bedroom. And it kind of, he talks about how similar all the environments became, apart from a few hints from, the language that was being used or some landmarks. So it kind of started with this idea of, we kind of want to define that, define typical architecture as something that evolved from a very utilitarian viewpoint of architecture. And it kind of poses a problem because it basically places the utilitarian architecture at the end of an evolutionary timeline, and it kind of replaced a lot of really important traditional logics that was embedded into architectures from different cultures. So instead of kind of going in a linear evolution, we kind of suggest diversifying the evolution pathway for architecture. So just to kind of make it clearer, there are different kind of cultures or architecture arising from different cultures that kind of are becoming slowly homogenized through this concept of typical architecture. And our goal was to basically sabotage its course to re-diversify it and kind of grow architectural resilience against different scenarios. So we started using, so the unit was divided into two different parts. The first part was research data analysis, and the second part was design. And during the data analysis stage, we used this generative tool called StyleGAN. And what it does is it basically, with the given data set of images, it picks up high attributes from the images and then high attributes and then basically show them. So we started collecting the images of typical architecture and untypical architecture. So in our minds, to kind of set it as a clear framework, we set untypical architecture as Korean architecture, which is like the countering notion to typical architecture, and typical architecture as modern kind of modern architecture that really kind of derived from functionality and utilitarian viewpoint. So this is the StyleGAN scripts. Sorry, this is basically the process of image collecting and kind of cleaning up the data set. And these are kind of the images of what StyleGAN creates from the data set of just different hanoks, the traditional Korean housings. And you can see that they really picked up some important attributes, but they're not the real thing, right? And we thought it was super interesting to kind of pick up design elements that were used in hanoks through the means of StyleGAN. And what we tried to do was basically to collect the same kind of data set of typical architecture. So again, kind of like the homogenizing modern architecture, and mix it with, like hybridize it with the help of StyleGAN with the Korean features. So you can kind of see some really interesting mixtures happening between kind of modern architectural elements with traditional elements. And what students tried to do was create their own data sets according to what they want to investigate, and they hybridized typical and untypical architecture in very different ways. So this was our agenda. So we had this research thing in the beginning that basically ran throughout the entire course. And obviously your computer never stopped working in the background because, you know, it was needed. And the design phase to kind of really understand, you know, what we analyzed, what we collected, and, you know, the outputs that were created from them. So these are the collections of, you know, all students' works. So we had 12 students, 6 teams, and each of them came up with very interesting, very different ideas, which really showed a pure, like, human creativity, because they used the exact same tool. We had the same topic, but they picked up completely different things, and we were really excited to, you know, explore the possibilities. So that was the Relayered Residential by Eunji Tak and Jongbum Kim. And what they tried doing was basically to understand different sequences of, you know, the Korean traditional housing and modern apartment blocks. And they kind of identified, you know, what differentiates, you know, typical architecture from untypical architecture in their case. And they kind of picked this really important notion of layering in hanok, and they tried to apply that into modern housing. So these were some mock-ups and, you know, like a superimposition of StyleGAN images to all traditional housings and so on and so forth. And this was basically their spatial understanding of what was hybridized. And some images of their work. So you can kind of see they really start to play with the kind of level differences and layering and how you encounter space, how spatial continuity was made through the means of understanding the traditional Korean features. And that's the courtyard in a new apartment block, which I think is really like even if it's not a real proposal, it's already very provocative. And this was Untypical Landmark by Hyunji Kim and Hyunwoo Kim, which kind of, they did a really interesting thing because they identify typical architecture as landmarks. So they believe that a lot of landmarks are made of free-form shapes, and because they are so many of them are now being made with free-form shapes, they became typical, although they have super unusual shapes. And they kind of tried to merge that with some Korean characteristics, and they kind of extracted different design elements, which was kind of this use of flattened and three-dimensional grids at the same time. The idea of stacking one on top of another, and kind of this like super intense layering of different elements. And what they tried doing was they wanted to really kind of take the potential of the design elements to their full extent and proposed a metaverse. So they wanted to build like create a design that really defied physics, but just using, you know, the elements they extracted. And they set a context of the World Expo of 2031, where a Korean pavilion had to be built, and these are the results. So yeah, I mean, you can kind of pick up different elements that were used from the generated images, and it's yeah, I mean, it was really beautiful, kind of provocative images. And then Sang-Yoon Kim and Seo Yu, so they really tried to understand what it means to use style again, and they kind of wanted to understand what typical cityscape and untypical cityscape is, and try to kind of see the transformation and like the variations that could happen, and you know what kind of comes in between. So what was interesting is that they explored the possibility of hybridization of these two kind of unlikely hybrids through a vertical kind of firstly through different kind of cycles of machine learning, and another cycle of just within one set of machine learning outcome. I think it will become clearer as I show. So each layer kind of represents latent space, which is an understanding that your cycle again forms from a set of images that you input. And this one plane is basically what at that cycle, the cycle again understands the images to be. And as obviously the time progresses and you know it goes through more training cycles, it kind of picks up more attributes and in more attributes basically. And this is basically the kind of vertical image here, shows the gradual kind of changes of, you know, what they believe was typical street into untypical street through the means of time and cycles in terms of cycle game. And another kind of effort was to kind of really explore the latent space within one cycle, and how like different variations could be created. So these are different hybrids that was extracted from one cycle, so the latent space. And it was really interesting just to kind of see, like just to study different variations that could emerge from hybridizing our understanding of what it means to walk through a typical kind of modernized, homogenized street to a very contextualized street. And then there's the story of Border by Juno Ham and Hanjun Kim, which is funny because we have a tutor named Hanjun Kim as well amongst our tutors. And they specifically looked at the notion of border between the inside and outside and between different spaces in both Hanok and modern housing, modern apartment blocks. And they identified some very important, they extracted some very important kind of design elements that they wanted to use after, later on to kind of create a new design. Sorry, yeah. And what they tried doing was they created a narrative of a baker family that kind of passes on their craftsmanship through this one space that evolves in its architectural features over time with the new notion of kind of found boundaries that was extracted from the data sets. And it was really like masterfully done in terms of time changes, the notion of narrative, design changes. It was just like a pleasure to really see the project evolve from beginning to end. And there was a very very interesting attempt to create a whole kind of urban scale building, like a city. So the name of the project is Long Live Hanok City. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to kind of reestablish the relationship of architecture to nature in modern times. So they basically got the idea from Pungsujiri, but not really following through on the exact logics of them, because we don't live in the same era where this could be applied. And they kind of extracted different structural elements and features from kind of functional utilitarian architecture, and they specifically extracted these structural concrete grid system that is inhabited through Hanok-like elements. So the smaller modules actually, when looked at more closely, have really embedded some how can I say, compositional logic of all traditional Korean housings, and the structure itself forms a new relationship from what they picked up. So they kind of saw this image of the roof of traditional Korean housing merging into the mountain, and they kind of read that as how mountain was such an important part of interpreting architecture, or like interpreting the context for architecture. And this tile of Kiwa was reinterpreted into a modern form, and it kind of started creating new relationship to the mountain. Oops. So I think this is a bit clearer, but it is nonetheless a very provocative image, and it like some find it absurd, some find it interesting, some find it really fun. I think it's all of them all together, but it kind of shows the overall kind of like what they try to achieve, which is like kind of the overall logic of this mega structure forming some kind of relationship with the mountain. So this is not really, kind of taking on the lineage of Pungsujiri, but basically coming up with a new idea with the interpretation they gained from StarGAN. And then there is, this is our last project, which is called Traversing Features, done by Sungwoo Kim and Sugyong Chun. And quite a fun diagram. So what they tried doing is explain through this diagram, which is very, easy to understand. And they squeezed the modern features and Hanok features from using StarGAN. They mix them up, they create a pool of different design elements, and they start making different cocktails of new typologies. And they wanted to understand what it meant, like what high-endness means in the culture, because they saw it as like the embodiment of the most noble idea of that time, especially through the means of interior. So they collected an image set from old Korean traditional housings and modern interiors. They merged them and kind of really started playing with, the elements, like the objects that were put in, and started creating this new understanding of, like the new, interior spaces. And what was really interesting was kind of this traversing, features that kind of goes, back and forward in time. So this like seemingly modern setting has an old Korean man in it, and and they really try to kind of bring these images not just as a collage but into a spatial understanding as well, as you can see from the I'm sorry, the line drawing is a little bit pixelated. These are actually super nice images, and another attempt at trying to understand the spatial qualities within. And this was another image that they made, and I think it's super interesting how this old man is sitting with this like a cross legs, what do you call it, in a cross leg position, though he has a chair. And I think that says quite a lot about this project in itself, because it's really about accepting new norms and hybridizing, unable to abandon your old habits and things like that. And I think it really goes well with the name Traversing Features as well. So these are all the collages that they've made, and they even play with the kind of curvature that was created from the hybrid, and made it into a walkway that is like a hall that also kind of picks up some features from like Tetmaru and so on. So these are all the works by our students, and I just want to say that it's I think it's a huge feat in itself just to be able to create any design outcome within the time span of less than 9 days, after learning a whole new tool, learning to analyze them, come up with a logic system and apply that to a design and actually make something. So I want to congratulate all the students, and yeah, that was Uni 4.
It was really hard-working process, I think. And also, I think because I really knew about the CycleGAN and StarGAN last year through the workshop, and I just realized what it is. But I think I really appreciate you guys got some kind of conclusion as a building by learning AI machinery, some kind of data set, and then learning process. So it's quite nice full package of it. But I have one question actually for tutor or any student, and how would Uni 4 evaluate the result of the proposal? For instance, is it project from the human as an architect or one of the exercise by machine itself?
This was something that was quite heavily discussed amongst tutors and students, but
yes.
I mean, StyleGAN does what it does. It just, analyze a bunch of images that was, put in, but the actual curation of data by human creativity really does affect the results. And for instance, these images were very specifically chosen according to perspectives, materials, and the general kind of atmosphere that they felt. So what was really interesting is that they had suspicions of what Korean interior meant, but they can really pick up what they are. And the students used them almost to, confirm what they believed was right. So I think just like any architectural tool, it is a tool. It just does what it does. But I think the intelligence, the human creative intelligence behind on curating and analyzing what came out, I think because of that, I believe it's completely human project.
Yes.
Though,
yeah, I agree part of it, but I think it is really nice to look at both Unit 3 and Unit 4 at the same time, I think, because Unit 3 is dealing CycleGAN as a tool, as a process of your whole package. But Unit 4 is using CycleGAN or StyleGAN as a kind of architect itself. So it's quite interesting to look at those same kind of, the machine learning process are using different part of the proposal process of the whole project. It's quite interesting to look at those two different units at the same time. So one question raised me, how can we face the machine learning process as architect in the future? So are we will be the just curator or coordinator to set up the data set, or since we're gonna use machine learning as a tool in order to achieve other goals as architect? So I think that's quite interesting topic or questions raised me by myself. So I think, so any idea of each tourist people, I wanted to a little bit more discuss about that. Also for Unit 2, I think as a Unit 2 process in the all kind package, they studied the reference study, like some very nice project they have in studies, and they picked a very interesting point from the eye of the reference in order to develop their idea. So I think that's similar process between Unit 2 and 4, but in the Unit 2, students, they evaluate, they draw by themselves, and Unit 4, machine learning did that. So, we can compare it on maybe final result as those aspects that is there as well. Yes.
thank you for the comment. That was really insightful. I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe Unit 4's work is part of, I think, exercise I can fit it, So how can we urge it is the architect's own works? So maybe it is old-fashioned style thinking, but I think we need to maybe aware of that in order to go further, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very good point and huge the discussion point in this AI the age. And I think to compete with this AI technique, we need to have the creativity that machine couldn't do. So I think that's the one possibility that machine couldn't suggest for the human. And then that's what we could do. Yeah, to compete the AI technology. Since, actually, one of the main methodology we investigate on the units was to discover unidentified features in the data set from the generated image from the StyleGAN. And then that's kinds of the role of the AI for the future. But I feel, yeah, so one other the possibility that could be discover, I mean, they identify the features and then they understand the results from the AI. So I think these 2 points could be the human roles in this the AI the age.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting discussion, and I totally completely agree with Chairman, your comment about the evaluation criteria. And I think this unit particularly, you use the tools as more like a generative or like creative inspirational modeling tool compared to maybe Unit 3. And there's no answer how we should use the tools. I think it's completely your choice. And even, for example, we have these modeling tools. We have been already some history of using them, but some people are playing with it and not really particularly knowing what kind of design they are going to try design, and playing out and try to find out different like sculptures out of it. But some people use it in order to just make something that is out of there already, or that is already in their head. So there are so many different ways of using tools. I think in particular this process, you guys are using it to kind of make it like find a bit more playful way of using it, looking at the generated images and try to re-understand it from spatial point of view, because you are particularly designing, you are generating human perspectives. So I think that's why I think maybe if you run another set of workshops, maybe this was like 9 days, very short workshop. So it was great, whatever you did, like created a lot of collage images to really give us a vision. But I also cannot stop thinking about that these kind of proposals are a little bit of for the sake of making a sabotage, or just sake of making it into a proposal. But there can be some more like maybe some rigorous comparison of generated 3D models out of certain generated images, and you have some kind of interesting comparison and competition between human and machine, for example. And maybe within this different team, maybe even just looking at one image, every person will understand it differently. And so maybe you kind of do a blind test how maybe 4 different humans will understand this one image in a differently in order to make a 3D model out of it, or generate a floor plan out of it. I think that kind of more rigorous evaluation kind of studies might be also quite interesting, but I think it's going to be too long if you encounter all these exercises, yeah, and then come up with a proposal. So as a short-term workshop, I think it's really interesting, yeah. But maybe if any of the students are interested in developing this further by October, for example, then maybe we can have some more interesting discussions to see if you have some comparison between machine and robot and some kind of rigorous studies. Yeah, that could be quite interesting.
Yes, I think it's really, yeah, I totally agree with Sumin. Actually, that's why, so we needed to decide what we're gonna do, by that. So that's our role, I think. Also, and for one more comment, I wanna say for the last images of the Unit 4, actually, I think the last drawing seems like a proposal of a single architect still, I think, although you guys having different form. So I think you'd better to think how to negotiate, how to draw as a presentation as last drawing, or as a result of the negotiation between computer and people. So I don't know exactly, but it is kind of one of the, I think, our I think aim, or we have to do actually what we can present, you know, some kind of works as a negotiation proposal. So I think, but I can't really see those kind of quality of that. Of course, 9-day workshop, everything, you got very nice work, I understand. So from this discussion, we have to think about it.
Thank you very much for sharing the work. I thought it was fantastic. I just have a quick question regarding the word choices that you've actually focused on. Because we didn't have enough time to discuss about the brief at the beginning, you know, the prep session that we had before. I mean, is there any I mean, is there a story behind choosing these two words, the typical and traditional?
So so I've been deeply interested in kind of the clash between traditional and modern architecture as like a very generic theme, right? And I did some research through my diploma project and on my own and through my platform. And I couldn't quite erase the suspicion that it was something to do with the homogenizing force. I kind of tried to ponder upon, you know, what was it that I was, you know, I thought was so homogenizing about these kind of architectures that made me so uncomfortable. And then I saw that, you know, photography project by the photographer I told you about in the beginning of the project. And I think that project is actually called Standards. But like, I mean, from there, I just thought that, okay, like basically these, there are these architectures that came to replace really, you know, of all different types and became, you know, the typical architecture everywhere else. So I thought, because it also has kind of like implies the notion of typology, I just thought that was quite an appropriate word choice for the theme that I wanted to explore.
I mean, I thought it could be a really interesting tool, like if we want to explore something that we cannot really elaborate so well with you know, our definition or language per se, but you know, something that we can actually recognize as a common experience. Let's say this tools that you are actually exploring. So I mean, perhaps like maybe I mean, of course, it's a fantastic work for the, you know, the first round of the workshop, but maybe like, you know, for the future development for like students' own fascination or the second round of the workshop for you guys, could also question about, you know, like, can we look at something that doesn't really have so much like intersection, like overlapping, you know, definition in common of these two words? Because I mean, I think it is very easy to be elaborated for what's already typified within the traditional architecture, or like what could be a typical like a, you know, experience of something, because like we already have some kind of like imagery in the mind. But if we choose like the two words that collide and have seemingly they have nothing in common, but in terms of the experience that we actually find something like a hybridized, and like we see the result as a surprise, I think that could be also really fantastic. But also like any word choices that's open to like a personal interpretation, But then actually it turns out that actually we can, collectivize these, the experience as like some kind of common thing. And, it actually can be defined through imagery. I think, that could be also really interesting exploration. So, I mean, it was really good to see like, really interesting potential of using these tools. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. And I just want to, sorry.
No, I think we need to wrap up, but like answer that. Yeah.
Right, sorry. And because as you were saying that, I just thought of the notion of non-place, right? Because all architects kind of understand what that means, but I think it's really hard to very specifically define it, right? Because it's so subjective. Some people who grew up in these non-places might find them very contextualized places. So yeah, it's very interesting insight. Thank you. I'll really think about it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we were running 40 minutes for unit 4, so yeah, we have to move on. We want to wrap up in 2 hours in total, so let's move on. Yeah, unit 2, please. Yeah, but I really appreciate the discussions and comments. Yeah, hope we have also another chance to do that.
Thank you for the all comments. Yeah, I think it's
unit 2,
very
please.
helpful. I think you're muted.
So who's speaking? We don't hear anything.
I think Heejin is speaking. Heejin, you're muted.
I think he cannot hear us.
Great. Sorry.
Okay.
Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
So I'll just quickly go through all the briefs that we've done, and I'll let 3 of our students to take over and go through their own projects. So yeah, we're in unit 2, and to begin with, we have been interested in bigness. So to be perfectly honest, J-Hub and I have a perpetual fascination on the bigness, the concept of bigness, and which means like one gigantic single room. But also, we thought that it's deeply related to the COVID situation at the moment, since all the gigantic spaces were no longer in use. So by studying it, we thought that it would be, a good chance to find a new potential. So we picked 12 unbuilt big projects, and let students to choose one and let them research each of them. So these are some of the examples of those big spaces. So each student picked one unbuilt project and did a research and started their project from there. So these are the sample research images that students have done. So we picked Ijigami's church, and so and for the production, the brief was very simple. We wanted students to make one line drawing and one collage. So these are the final images for the drawings. It could be either plan, section, or axonometry, which fits best with their own brief. And for the collages, goes like this. So the description was rather brief, but I'll let 3 of our students to take over and explain their own project. You'll, get the better understanding out of it. So the first student,
can you hear my voice? Hello, my name is Im Jung-jae, Unit 2. My project was 200 platforms for 10,000 people. I think about the prisons. Last winter, a large number of confirmed cases of coronavirus occurred at the Eastern Detention Center of Seoul. Existing detention center were closed and difficult to quarantine infected people from within, making it difficult to respond to infectious diseases such as COVID. However, I think the problem was only revealed by the COVID-19, not by the COVID-19. Existing prison facilities accommodate a large number of people, but the living condition of prisoners are very poor. Nearly 10 inmates living in the one room, and there is no proper separation between them and the special space. This was previous exist prisons plans or type, and I think this is not a very vulnerable disease, but also there is a human rights issue. So I was going to suggest a new alternative to this. My research work was Saitama Arena by the OMA. Saitama Arena is a complex facility with a stadium on the ground and cultural facility on the top floor. And this unique thing about this work is that it has completely different programs at the top and the bottom. And there is a box middle can move up and down, creating various spaces. And also, another feature of OMA's collage image is that it wanted to remove all structural frames and emphasize the slabs floating in the air. This is the existing section drawings. It shows frames responsible for the entire structures. The drawing were redrawn to make the slab more visible, like the first image, and tracing was carried out again in such a way that only slabs cut by cross sections. Considering this tracking drawing, collage image, and moving parts of existing work, I thought the key element of this project was a free slab. So I conducted a study on the aspect of gathering following this free Slavic relation, this Slavic relationship. I thought each type showed that the larger the floor height, the stronger the separation, and I rearranged it. Depending on the scale, it is expected to have variety of personalities ranging from the smallest to urban level. The first is the minimum distinction step, and which is the height of stairs. In that case, it makes a distinction between areas compared to the lack of steps, but there is a little hurdles to move freedom. However, as the steps grow, when they reach urban scale, they reach an impossible level for people to move directly any further. This is image of sorting out of the scale height differences. Type A has a height difference of 1 stairs, type B has degree of sitting, and type C has floor height. It's organized into 3 subtypes. I could see that they had different personality depending on the way they were repeated or arranged. In that case of type A, there is a weak boundary between 2 areas, but it usually does not block people from meeting. The height of stairs works like a playground and allows for large-scale gatherings. In the case of type B, the movement of person depends on the direction in which he or she is seated at the height where he or she can sit. Therefore, it is easy to control directionality of gatherings. Type C prevents direct meetings if there are no movements such as stairs. However, visual and auditory exchanges between the separated are possible. Therefore, it is possible to having a meeting without physical contact. The character of each these steps was thought to be able to satisfy the different condition of the prisons and to present new types. Based on this, the space where various gatherings and large-scale individual gatherings take place in is considered and arranged as a platform. This is the concept image when deployed to the city. In this drawing, based on this, huge scale prisons are dug deep like sinkholes in the middle of the city. The city scale step separated the space between citizens and inmates. Unlike conventional prisons, these steps melt into the cities because they do not require huge walls. At the same time, visual interaction with ordinary citizens is also possible. This can have a better effect on both inmates and citizens. Meanwhile, large and small platforms are located along the perimeter of the prison. The lives and work of prisons are available here. Platforms for one person are also deployed just for the pandemics happens again. The largest space in the middle is a huge outer space, and the largest gatherings takes place. People can enjoy various programs here. The platform's step-by-step approach allows the separation of space without building walls, and also allows for a wider outside space, which is more emphasized by the coronavirus. Above all, it is a separated space, not a disconnected space, which paradoxically enables 10,000 people to coexist. Lastly, I will show you the collage image and end the presentation. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Hi, my name is Hadin from Unit 2, and my present project was 10,000 columns for 10,000 people. My project began at Gwanghwamun Square. Gwanghwamun was the center of politics, administration, and diplomacy in Seoul. And looking back at the times, Gwanghwamun Square was controlled and restricted by historical and political needs by the various powers. I was able to confirm through these events that it was a hierarchical space of power. As a place to fight against power and as a place to express opinions, citizens are always located on the opposite of Gwanghwamun. Conversely, the funeral of the powerful went from top to bottom. Space of Gwanghwamun Square cannot be defined as a single character, but rather a complex space where the public opinion gathered, changed, and explodes according to the flow of history. As such, Gwanghwamun Square is the most important place in Seoul and also a living loop of Seoul. In my opinion, characteristics of square mentioned above seem to arise because of these three factors: existence of Gwanghwamun, long linear shape, and huge scale of plaza. Etienne Louis Boulet is a symbol of the huge space. Therefore, I conducted a study on the buildings of Etienne Louis Boulet. His buildings are huge and managed. And Metropolitan Church is the same. I redraw the plan and try to figure out the exact scale. When compared side by side to the drawings of Notre Dame, Firenze, and St. Paul's Cathedral, which we know well, we could see that it was about 10 times bigger. Also, the size of the dome was shown to be 6 to 10 times bigger than typical cathedral. I thought it was a dome at the center that symbolized authority in Metropolitan Church. So I checked how it would be when dome is removed. Then I could see that there was only a column left, creating a less authoritative space. I thought only columns can serve as a space. First of all, I studied about the law of the columns. The law of the columns is various. I categorized them into 8 types. And I tried drawing while imagining what would be done in its space of metropolitan church. Furthermore, I rearranged the columns and create more diverse and homogeneous spaces. I thought Gwanghwamun Square and Metropolitan Church looked very similar. Dome is similar to Gwanghwamun, and Greek cross shape is similar to linear shape of plaza. In both, architecture represents power. I applied what I learned through the study of Gwanghwamun Square. I decided to break a shape through placing columns. The urban structure is the most representative architectural language that shows the power and the ritual. So I propose a new square shape by place columns in Gwanghwamun Square. In this case, the following 3 changes are expected. Gwanghwamun is a symbol of power, and power is directed toward it. The existence of Gwanghwamun creates direction, so I eliminate frontality through columns. When surrounded by columns, we don't know where the front is, and it became not that important. So it could be a homogeneous space, and there will be no directionality. Second, Gwanghwamun Square was not suitable for small-scale events because it consists of a linear form. I broke down this linear form to disperse the assembly and create a space for gathering that are more appropriate to the public opinion. Third, and I also downsized the huge scale. This act allows to observe all religious rallies, festivals, or gathering of small groups, as well as mass protests. I amplify all types of gatherings that can happen in Gwanghwamun Square through this. I hope it to be a daily space for someone, space to hold a rally, or space for festivals, and for some, I want it to be a park where they can rest. I want to transform it into a space where people can gather and use comfortably, like a real living room. Through this, I want to change Gwanghwamun Square, which used to be Dad's living room, into our living room. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Ho Jun, and the title of my project is 50 Stairs for 10,000 People. I'll just go briefly about my project. So the Yeouido Financial District, where high-rise buildings are concentrated, has been hit directly by the coronavirus. So as a result, face-to-face business has been disrupted, and transition to telecommuting has revealed that the existing office structure is vulnerable to corona. So I imagined a temporary office for the corona era. So before office, people used to work alone, but the industrial revolution and the development of technology, a large scale of office developed. But due to the corona in 2021, people had to work in home. So people who doesn't want to work at home had to find another space, an alternative space to work. So I thought that we need a new type of office for them. And I questioned in corona era, should it be like one box space? And to answer this question, I looked for a hint from the unbuilt project Fun Palace by Cedric Price. He used just the structures and machines for accommodating temporary programs. By using the cranes on the upper structure, he penetrates the programs and circulations. So this is a structure, and this is the programs, showing the section of the structure and the programs. And I focus on the escalators because unlike normal escalators, in case of Fun Palace, they rotate. And when you look at the Fun Palace rotating escalator, the axis is on the end point of the escalator. So they gather people from various starting point to one single endpoint. And what I did was simply reflecting. So I moved the axis from endpoint to a starting point. So by using this methodology, people from one starting point scatters to many endpoint, and this may seem like not a gatherer, but when these escalators are combined by overlapping starting points and endpoints, people can gather. So by controlling the velocity of the escalator, this methodology can make a low density space or a high density space. And I also thought about the shape of the escalator units. And I looked for some, I researched some and made a diverse kind of units. And by combining them, the original Fun Palace changed to a combination of various rotating escalators. And this Fun Palace gets to located in Yeouido Park. And this is the axonometric. So Fun Palace, it has escalators that can be accessed from financial companies that is concentrated up and down, and countless people who enter the Fun Palace through the escalators, travel between floors through rotating escalators with varying direction and speeds. So this will spread the population density of the Fun Palace. And this is the each element of the Fun Palace. So in a summary, I propose a Corona-era temporary working space where population density can be controlled by combining the rotating stairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they are really fantastic. Yeah, really interesting ways of you looking at quite pure architecture elements and really programatize it. Yeah, and utilize the spatial elements. And I thought that's quite interesting. Either staircases or columns or slabs. Yeah, they were quite interesting ways of organizing spaces. Yeah. Any comments or questions from the audience?
I actually guess.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead. It's fine. I talk too much.
I feel like I talk too much too. I have a question to the tutor. So I kind of figured that the bigness that you're talking about derives from the theory of bigness by Rem, XML. Is that right?
So like in our unit, the bigness, like some of the like other students' project is actually really small. Because like what we thought the bigness is not just the size, like throughout the like researching of like unbuilt huge project, we wanted to just find out like kind of like core element that is defining some kind of gathering space. But it depends on like each student. Like so some student chose like really unrelated things with the project itself. Like Jungjae today's he suggests like prison in the city, but instead of his like talking about the slab itself, suddenly the like element turned into the like gap between the like each level. So I think it's really depends on like each student like has like their own criteria or perspective of like element and defining the space. So I think it can be more like possibilities to go on freely.
Because I wanted to ask why it was specifically for 10,000 people, because I felt like that was like your criteria in the beginning, and I thought that was, I think it's really interesting how the multiplicity of smaller elements are used to create this space that is defined by 10,000 people. I just want to hear your thoughts on it.
And as you see, like each student research and then pick some element and setting a rule. At that time, there was like so many arguments because the rule setting was like sometimes it's really unlogical because it doesn't fit with like actuals. And it's like the rule set was like setting by their own perspective of the understanding the space. So the number was also a kind of that I expected because I thought like the number can help them to design it somehow, but just 10,000 people was like just to show the amount of like large number. It was like not at the final result. It was not correct number. It disappeared in somehow.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah, if I just jump in, thank you very much for all the presentation. Yeah, I mean, I thought they were great. I don't know whether those 3 students who presented are still on here. I mean, if I just go one by one and kind of comment, I mean, the first one was brilliant. I thought the city prison, it's super polemic, and basically you've already depicted the scales that exist in like urban situation, and you just condensify it into one. And basically, like we already kind of live in prison in that sense. So, I mean, like super well done for kind of making the condition really visible, but with such a simple like spatial criteria. And the column project, I mean, I got super excited until the when the dome, the ceiling was like taken off, and then your statement of it's becoming like a less recognizable form just by that operation, and like what do we do with the column? But I mean, like because because the site that's been chosen is actually really like politically sensitive, and this, I don't know, like of course, I mean, it's a 7-day workshop, and you probably don't want to like have too much of a critical view, and you want to explore something. But I think this like recognizable form, politicization and depoliticization is a really important thing for defining space. And it's, I mean, I personally thought that why I mean, the student could have actually continue focusing on like, oh, actually what makes things recognizable as a structured form, and then like how much operation that you have to take on to make it like less and less recognizable, like until what point do we actually experience it. I think that could have been like super fascinating thing, rather than imposing like scenarios and make it totally blurry and unrecognizable. I mean, because we see so many like projects with like columns, scale variation. Ishigami already mastered it in a sense. but you know, but maybe like instead of like making like arbitrary choices on the placement of the columns, I think, or the density, maybe the, you know, actual, the volumetric perception of the column that changes with the same like a geometrical configuration, that could have been also quite interesting with the very subtle changes of the position. I don't know. I think, I mean, it's a general like a view that I have with the units exploration. It's it just needs to be experiential, right? Like, because, and I think, you know, getting into either, I mean, I would suggest that either make it very visible, like what the student wants to argue for, or make it completely like nonsensical, unless it's something that just needs to be experienced and it can only be designed, it can only be explained through design. But you know, I think like if what I mean, I don't know whether I'm really making sense, but like whenever I see these kind of like in betweenness, I thought, oh, it could have gone for much more extreme in this way, or actually it just can be very polemic project, like because it's trying to encompass like multiple things at the same time. I thought it's like we don't have enough time to do both. But yeah, anyway, I mean, like in general, like I love all the projects that's been presented, because I didn't get to see them in the cross script. So fantastic work. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I also think I really agree with the comments. And one thing probably, like, yeah, it's a short workshop, but what you can probably explore more is the adjacency and relationship with those elements. And I think throughout all three projects, that although you have categorized all different typologies and scales, but that was not really went through to your final proposal, for example. Yeah, so you categorize different column sizes and like different linearities and dislinearities, right? And also your slabs, you have this furniture scale, human scale, and urban scale and everything, but kind of not really rigorously applied to your final proposal. And I know it takes a lot of time to do that. Yeah, so as a creating a vision for communicating, you did a fantastic job. So yeah, if you would love to develop it further, I think you can reflect on this a little bit. Yeah, but great job.
And actually, it is really nice works, and it's really progressive since I think mid review. It's really good. I think especially the last images and drawings is showing the how it apply for the urban condition, which is good, I think. But also at the same time, I thought the representation or critiques on referential images, referential projects. Actually, the way you pick the reference project is really good, I think. It's unbuilt. Also, it has huge spaces. It means it has some kind of common ground quality it has. So I think RPT is a little bit, if you guys research or analysis of huge spaces, common ground project, why don't we exploit a little bit more about quality of size, or what is the human ground quality itself, rather than focusing on the element, I think. I know, I understand it's a 1 week workshop, but I think what you are trying to do is kind of huge spaces as a gathering space in the middle of a city in making impact. So in a way, I think that kind of research should be done a little bit more. If you have more time, I think it could have a more argumental, I think, statement you're gonna have later on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, actually, now I feel like I made some really inappropriate comments, because my comments were oriented towards the brief, not to the student outcome, actually. You know, because I mean, come on, it's crazy amount of work. We all have to recognize it, and it's beautiful and very thought-provoking for, you know, if you see the last images. But I mean, like, okay, for students, I think if you can make it more explicit of what you're trying to argue, like what Jaewon says, I think that could be actually more helpful for people outside of your unit to understand your project and your own reading of the unbuilt project, and you know, diagrammatic understanding of the you know, the unbuilt project, and when it's applied within the context somewhere, it works in a really funny way, or it just doesn't work. So you're actually critiquing back to the you know, the unbuilt project. I mean, you know, you guys have to kind of make it more intentional, the presentation. I don't know whether it's already been agreed with the tutors that you don't present in that manner, but you know, nevertheless, I'm sure you've learned so much, like judging by the slides that you presented. So I mean, super well done. Like, it's incredible work, and we can like this on how to improve on our individual brief after this session, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we can move on. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Can I invite Unit 1 tutors?
I don't know how to do this. NA, do you want to share a screen, or?
Yeah, sure. I can just I'll do now.
Yeah, I mean, first, thank you to our students.
Oh my God.
Yeah, our students, if you guys can all turn on your camera, because you will participate in this presentation for the last time. Yeah, I mean, I can only praise for their attitude, passion, and the outcome. And you know, I would also like to thank our amazing teaching team. You know, we never knew that we would work together so well, considering how different we are. And also, thank you to the Visiting School Seoul team for very meaningful exchange, and also the social algorithm research group who made this possible. So to give a very brief description on the unit's work, we understand typology as a socio-political apparatus that molds us to behave and live in a certain way without really questioning the hidden layers behind it. And underneath these typologies, there are often unquestioned values and fixed conception of what it is supposed to be, and how we are also subsumed under the fixity. So mutation, on the other hand, makes us move away from this fixity. So our students have taken this difficult challenge to look into deeper layers of our society and deeply ingrained values, which are heavily associated with our omnipresent spaces, the K typologies. So Kyung, NA, and I are extremely proud of the students who were able to demonstrate their understanding of the spaces and how these can be understood as typologies, and also how the mutations of the typology provides the opportunity to counter the typology and the associated typo production, actually, which is even more difficult to be revealed in many cases. However, even the ones with the strongest commercial intentions carry this possibility, and students were able to unveil this. In this reduced version of the presentation, we should be able to see different endeavors from the seminar reading, forensic investigations, from article extraction, and numerous site visits, and etc. So students also formed an atlas of photography images, which also shows the paradigmatic understanding of the space and social phenomena. We were able to form a proposition on the reading of the typology through these exercises, and this should be resonated through the final image production, both the typological and the counter typological understanding of the space. So yeah, in conclusion, it's been a super difficult week for all of us to work against the time difference that applies to all of you guys, I guess, and site visits in hot weather, tight production schedule, and the unfamiliar juggle of research, thesis formation, and all of these in a condensed manner. So, but in the end, we pulled it through and managed to execute very thought-provoking work with a new pair of critical eyes. So instead of Ja, Na, and I present the work on behalf of our students, we thought it's only appropriate for students to have the much deserving stage for the finale. We hope the audiences enjoy the work and our students to be able to present the work in a celebratory manner. Ujin, Jungyu, Yeonjun, Minji, Sangwon, Sungwon, Uhyun, Yerin, Jian, Jiwon. Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure to work with you all. Now over to Ujin, who will start the presentation.
Okay, the typology I'm going to introduce is a convenience store. Most convenience stores are located on the first floor of a street with a large plodding population and are open 24 hours a day. Anyone in the city can easily access this place anytime. It provides service such as delivery, ATM, and transportation card charging as it expands its service area. People can go to convenience stores lightly without any particular purpose and are provided with a sense of safety. In her essay, Maria looks at Goshiwon as the counter typology of apartment. In this context, the Goshiwon seems like a radical proposition. Women can stop providing their reproductive labor for free, and they can even buy such labor for the care of their own selves from the Goshiwon landlord or landlady. Goshiwon is free from what society is pressuring. It is possible options for those who cannot choose apartments and place to quit reproductive labor. Convenience stores offer almost cooked food, disposables, and space. This helps free people from reproductive labor and also provide a place to escape. Convenience stores work as alternative space for homes. This flow changed beyond the interior to the road, creating mutations. This atlas is a map of the outside space of the convenience store. We can find a type of outer space: window, ATM device, delivery box, refrigerator. Here we can see the changes in the outer space of the convenience store: parasols, chairs, desks, lights, flower pots. It is almost like an extended domestic space because of the comfort and convenience that people can feel here. The first main image expresses the convenience store space feeling like a part of a house. It collected images of the inside of convenience stores and image of personal spaces. The second main image expresses the mutation in the outer space of the convenience store. It maximizes and expresses the feeling and use of this place as alternative house.
My project is Sangha Invisible Mutation. Sangha can be seen as Korean shopping complexes where various commercial programs come in. I looked at the Sangha focusing on the fact that rapid changes are constantly taking place, but it is difficult to notice. In the past, houses and Sangha in Korea were separated from each other. Unlike overseas, where the popularized method of placing commercial facilities on the first floor and houses on the upper floors. Perhaps for this reason, Korean sangha were very typological spaces. The same type of rooms are repeated along the corridor, and various programs enter and operate in these rooms. Maria Judith in her writings says, Karen cells offer just one solution that is still very conventional in terms of what it means to work or rest. Less typological defined units would encourage the users to actively reimagine their lives. This means that a typologically defined space forces people to act and cannot create new. The continuation of the uniform space that can be seen from Sangha corresponds to the aforementioned typological space. When the typology of Sangha was formed, it was planned with its own purpose of a commercial establishment. As Korean society develops and the space of Sangha has evolved on its own, and the character as a container has been strengthened, the lessors cater to the needs of the tenants and the design of the space becomes neutral. This generality are shown by elements that we can see on this image. These elements are facilities, which are hidden behind walls, and the Sangha is defined by these things. Programs of different personalities coming in and out, adding and cutting equipment repeatedly. Here, the mutation that extends, cuts, but is invisible. Facilities exist in the Sangha in a variety of ways. Although invisible, once the skin are peeled off, the equipment is doing its part amongst the various materials. It has been transformed into a new space through numerous mutations, but a space where all these changes are hidden and not revealed, a space where invisible mutations occur. This is the Korean Sangha. Already, Sangha contain many alternatives as well as commercial ones. I also offers experiences that cannot be done at home, such as PC Cafe. It is no longer possible to think of a Sangha as just a commercial one. Therefore, we can expect to see how the space of the Sangha will change in the future through another mutation.
Hi, my name is Jian Choi. I will talk about photo studio and what Min photo studio has in Korea. This is a scene in the movie Brazil, where Sam's mother, the main character, has plastic surgery to make her younger. In this scene, the doctor says that the lady's cosmetic surgery uses first-class poisons like hyaluronic acid. This made me feel that the better the system, the more it seems to create unresolved problems. This line condenses the entire content of the film. The film shows the errors of the future society of the perfect control system. In reality, despite numerous errors, people only trust the seeming system. I felt that the message of this film was somehow similar to the attitude that people treat as if the photograph was real, even though it was not real. The photo studio is changing spatially according to the times. The digital age has opened, and now we can create our own photos as much as we want. And we completely believe in the creative virtual thing. Nevertheless, the photo studio still exists. Why? Why can it still exist? My work is my own thoughts on this question. This image shows just how important image is in Korea. Samsung is the largest company in Korea. People fill out the same form of application to get into Samsung, which must include a photo of themselves. In Korean society, we make it possible for everyone to have the most aesthetic image of themselves or their creations. A photo studio is a space to create this kind of image. I think that a photo studio is not just a space to get a photo, but a space to experience it. No one is taking pictures in the photo studio as they wake up. To take pictures, we choose the clothes we want, put on makeup, tidy up our hair, and decorate ourselves. In our most perfect form, we are standing in front of the camera. This sequence of experiences makes you feel like you are being treated. Even at a self-portrait studio, the behavior is no different. I think this sequence has already taken place as a big event in our lives, like a traditional thing. The studio is filled with elements to create experience. People act as if there is a set of rules in the photo studio. Look in the mirror, put on makeup, wear a suit, and fix your hair with a spray like this. I want to show the elements that make the experience in photo studio. There is no any special architecture thing in the studio. The elements can make people experience the sequence in the studio. The name of this image is face wall. The wall covered with pictures of people was like an architectural code that can be found in any photo studio. It is interesting that this word allows us to time travel. The photos reveal the statues of the times through makeup, hair, clothes, backgrounds, and so on that are popular at the time. Thank you for listening my presentation.
Hello, my name is Uhyun, and the title of my AAVS project is Independent Bookstore. Independent, Individual, and Identity. Let's start. Before starting to talk about independent bookstores, let's take a look on the quote of Browne's Domestic Animals. Normality is created out of the sum of many abnormalities. I think what this text says is very similar to Korea's statement. The phenomenon of wanting individual tastes to be respected and respecting others' tastes, which used to be described as abnormalities, have recently emerged very strongly as a social phenomenon. And this social phenomenon is expressed in a variety of ways recently as a tool of revealing individual desire. So I read Independent Bookstore as one strong example of mirror reflecting social atmosphere which individual's identity is expressed and respected. Based on this point, first atlas image is the elevation of many independent bookstores. There are many types of housing buildings in Korea, and independent bookstores are operating in parasitic manner in those housing buildings. Also, there is little information about bookstores in their elevation. This is quite awkward since bookstore is commercial space. Next is an atlas of the interior that is very fashionable, very different depending on the characteristics of each bookstore. There may be similar things such as plant types and locations, but the same things do not exist because it is the means of revealing identity of each bookstore. I interpret these as fierce efforts by independent bookstores to survive. It is a very personal space created according to each individual's tastes, so these are the things trying to be differentiated. However, despite the fact that the space of independent bookstores has a variety of characteristics and creates a new space for individuals' lives, it should be recognized as a bookstore for us. This atlas focused on what is understood as a bookstore in independent bookstores, not just books. Finally, in independent bookstores, where each fascination is possible, various things that are unlikely to happen in bookstores are happening on a variety of behavioral and spatial scales. Therefore, in the last atlas, I tried to snap at something other than selling books that individual bookstores do. This includes book talks, lectures, cafes, and photographs, depending on the identity of each independent bookstore. This is the first main image that represents the current phenomenon. Bookstores are closer to our daily lives than we thought. Existing in various places, they use the places with different purposes other than original existing spaces. They are struggling to survive. And then this is the second main image, the counter-typological image. As we have seen earlier, the space and the contents of bookstores are changing. But I think there are still some types. Just as the book continues to be written anew, the usability of the space of bookstores where the book is stored should also be varied. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm someone of Unit 1, and I'm going to analyze the mutation in Seoul based on villa, especially the most common villa that we could see everywhere in Seoul. Void phobia. It creates a very reasonable and also strange form of buildings in nowadays. The rigor construction rate and lower space rate inhibit the possibility of wider spaces, but it couldn't stop people's desires. Between illegal and legal, Korean builders have mutated to expand their desires within a given boundary. For this project, I found 4 atlas typologies to describe the mutation of builders. First, atlas often do not have gardens or green space enough. So there are potted plants to fill the lack of green space, and those also could be used for various purposes as protecting the privacy of the underground layer. Canopies to avoid the rain are now filled the entire building area. The minimum space to open umbrellas increasingly be board, showing a strange scenes seem to be full. A protruding window, known as bay window, is a device that embodies the expansion of space in house. This is an expression of the desire to seek maximum efficiency with minimal gesture, either as a warehouse or as a small space by the window. Last, as the construction was allowed within 1 meter of the outer wall under the construction law in Korea, the exterior steps surrounded the building at the boundary of the law. These exterior steps to increase one household on the rooftop and protect each household's privacy surrounding the building and add other cheap materials to the outside. These 4 typologies are mutant properties of the villa about. What I want to know with first image was these strange variations are invading, knowing, and increasing their influence in residential spaces that should be valued the most. Moreover, the people seem to be more focused on the outside expansion, and they look like for how much more they can expand than on home care. Besides, I also found another interesting moment. Most mutations often work against the expectation. Those unexpected events remove the mutation's origin purpose. This diversity uses actually disprove the desire for space's expansion was senseless and directionless. Most of the space is intended and created as if it has a purpose, but in reality, it naturally changes, moves, and mutates. Korean villas have been transformed from the beginning of the expansion of available space to their own style and life.
The project title is Daycare Center Eternal Adolescent House. Axolotl is an amphibian that retains juvenile characteristics even after the full development. Through this, Giorgio Agamben claims that a childlike state can contain the possibility and potentiality, unfixed and able to mutate. So the subtitle Eternal Adolescent House is implying the potentiality of adolescents to adapt and mutate. The typology that I looked at was the daycare centers in domestic apartment buildings. In Korea, there is a significant increase in number of public daycare centers in the apartment building due to the government policy. This research is based on the site investigation that I've done with another project that I participated. I was lucky enough to visit around 20 national daycare centers in Seoul, including 8 apartment complex cases. It was significantly different sense of space compared with the daycare centers in individual buildings. The conventional apartment entrance with different signs expressing its program. The layer of daycare program is added on the top of the domestic configuration of the space, creating interesting observations. Borrowing words from the Maria Gudici's critic for Henry Roberts' The Model Houses for Families, she is talking about the role and position designated by the architect, which is at odds with the actual needs of the occupants for most of the times. Today's Korean apartment plans have not moved far from Henry Roberts' diagram. It is enforcing the rules of the inhabitants. The typology that this research is investigated is about the daycare program adapting to the conventional apartment plan, mutating into the designated characteristic of each space. The images show the remaining characteristics of domestic environment expressed through the adapted daycare program. Within the familiar sequence of space and room sizes, the elements for daycare program is adapted. With the atlas images, you can capture the conventional apartment size, location, and framing of the window in the nursery room. The glance of veranda or built-in wardrobe can also be read as the remaining of the apartment domestic space. The large living room space usually gets divided to create a small and narrow space for administration. The original elements of the bathroom are replaced to children's scale. The space is mutated to satisfy the regulations and needs of the program, which sometimes creates irrational seen in familiar setting. With the conventional viewpoint from the living room area towards the kitchen and entrance, the configuration and sequence of the room has the familiarity. The layer of domestic space is depicted with the service spaces in the view. Daycare service is showing their increase in numbers, hence the social needs of childcare can be assumed and therefore developed figure of this typology will increase. It shows that mutation of space for program has the adolescent characteristic, which is believed to have the potentiality and possibility to be mutated and adapted. In our society, various forms of childcare are emerging and redistribution of reproductive labors as well. However, for children, the inhabitants, unfixed characteristic contains the potential to adapt into different environments.
I'm Yerin, and my title is Retrofit Cafe. Retro style currently are being consumed trendily. Recently, anti-architects are retrofitting on old building in Uljiro. They supersede the previous purpose and give new uses. The number of retro style spaces has increased as retro became popular. Young people are skeptical about the unstable future values and rather admire the values of the past that have already been formed. In the end, young people who feel lost in the uncertainty of the modern society find a space of past where clear structures remain and reproduce in their own interpretations. These phenomena create retro typologies. People consume space that carries the image of the past, but it is not concerned with the past. It means just reproduce retro style spaces recently. Or people consume spaces stuffed with the past, like Dabang, which is an old-fashioned Korean cafe. But young people come to Uljiro, the space of the past, due to the economic hardship. We still witness interesting potentials from these architecture agents who are not architects. Uljiro cafes have become a trend and become a kind of cultural phenomenon and a single anti-typology. In this process, abandoned and useless buildings are newly used and changed, and after some time, they have another variation. This quote means that regulations and policies for certain diseases do not become controlled, but result in another social phenomena. Like the quote, this new cultural phenomenon creates a space with anti-typology.
I understand these building elements created by anti-architects as anti-typologies. There are 4 categories of atlas. Firstly, you can find the architectural elements of the building built in 80s with modern objects like door, stairs, or railing. In this picture, pipe is used as a curtain rack or railing is surrounded by vine plants. Anti-architecture reuse old architectural elements without architectural knowledge, not afraid to expose the infrastructure grid for lighting. Next, there is no signboard because of uniqueness. People think this cafe is a place that only I know. So a handwritten paper sign or painting look like one of elevation. Next, selectively modify the wall floor surface for the new uses in a minimal way. In this picture, you can see old wall surface with the new floor surface. Next, in the mutate building with modern objects or acting, I can see the old viewed Seoul with a sashi. These views are very absurd. In the old town of Seoul, abandoned and useless buildings are newly used and changed, and after some time they have another variation. So I want to show the original nature of architecture is maintained, but its value and uses depend on how it is reproduced. Just like the old hardware store was reproduced and mutated into the cafe. Nextly, the mutated building contains the architectural elements of the 80s. The paint was peeling off the wall, old tiled floor, and so on. In contrast to that, modern objects and moves are observed. People are selling brunch or organic wines. Outside the sash, you can see the manufacturing area of Ulchiro or an old sign of the building. Coexistence of our inside and outside views is very absurd.
Hi, my name is Sangwon. My project is about street kiosk, unretained government propaganda. I'm going to tell you about one of the K typology street kiosk and also about the ambivalence of them. Before I start, I read the text which is relevant to my project, Nomadic Interiors, Living and Inhabiting in an Age of Migrations. I got 2 quotes from this text, and these quotes meant that there were an ambivalence of nomadic interior or liquid society, and the text is telling us that people should be aware of this ambivalence of mutation. In Korea, we can find lots of box-shaped kiosks on the boundary of the street. These kiosks were illegal in the past, but now legalized in few locations. In this project, I focused on the 2 sides of these shops, front and back. So I made 3 types of atlas images, which shows the closed front view, the back view, and the opened front view. So and also I surveyed the street kiosk in 2 different locations, Sinchon and Jongno. First, these are the closed front views of the kiosks. There are no informations and had only a few scribbles in Jongno. However, in Sinchon, there were some paintings and it was a quite different image from Jongno. I think this image difference comes from the location, campus, and downtown. Next, these are the back views of the kiosks. You can see the difference and back. There are a few small informations and advertisements of the shops and also some government advertisements. For the last atlas, these are the open front view. It shows the variety of the shops and you can see people using the kiosks on the street. The main point I want to show you is that although the legalization and the standardization of the kiosk plus the government's propaganda, merchants want to expand their commercial places and also advertise their shops. You can see there are lots of awning, display stand, and also some chairs for people on the street. And this is the main image 1. As you can see, the kiosks are at the side of the street and there are government propagandas at the back of the kiosk as I surveyed. So this work as a billboard of the government, which they can advertise their policies or something that could bring benefit to them. So what I want to show you from this image is that the legalization of the kiosk is actually kind of a device for the government's propaganda. Finally, I prepared the main image 2 for the counter typology. You can see the difference between main image 1 and 2. 2 shows the point that I explained at the front about the merchant's desire of their commercial advertisement and expansion of their space. There are a lot of things to expand their own kiosk space, such as big parasols, plastic chairs, and also some storages for their overstuffed interiors. So in conclusion, in image 1 and 2, you can see that there are some small but fierce sparks of conflict between the merchants and the government inside the small billboard. I was very interested about this point when I figured it out, and this was one of the K typology I've investigated. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Junki Park, and what I wanted to see was infrastructure and industrial goods that makes daily cityscape of Seoul, and I just asked who made it. On the Korea, especially Seoul, has changed a lot at once with the Asian Games and the Seoul Olympics in the mid-80s. Most of urban infrastructure that we now routinely see and the industrial products that come with it are mostly made during at that time. Materials, designs, and layout of new infrastructure and industrial products have changed the landscape of Seoul. I thought that the certain infrastructure and repetitive industrial products were creating a type of street in Korea. And I saw that the two were closely related. So first, I wanted to typify their close relationship. This is my atlas image, and the observations show that they are gathered in a particular way. And I looked at it in two different atlas images. The atlas one on the left is combined with vertical infrastructure, such as vertical bars, telephone poles, signs, and street trees. And the atlas two on the right is supported by horizontal infrastructure, such as fence, electricity boxes, and equipment boxes. And if it is replaced with architectural elements, it could be recognized as column and walls. In the case of atlas image 1 left, it is either racked or gathered around a column. Most of them are repetitive industrial products in Korea, and many are racked into infrastructure. Atlas image 2 is usually a wall supporting things or backrest of a chair. Most of street stores were building spaces with fences as their base of the support. It was interesting because the fence has never been made for it. I found their relationship interesting, and I believe it supports many people's daily lives. At the same time, I know some people are uncomfortable with their solidarity just because it's messy or disturbing. So I wanted to tell some jokes. I just thought like this. Maybe they thought we could put it there. So what about over there? I walked around the house with a small chair and bicycle racks and connected them to various infrastructure. Also hung up a chair. Is that illegal? Or is that gonna pay a fine? I'm not sure, but yeah, this was my joke. Maybe it wasn't funny. Anyway, I believe that the combination of infrastructure and industrial product is not just a combination of things and things. It is about the union of individuals and society. The relationship between infrastructure and industrial products is very close. It also makes up someone's daily life, like these pictures. What I can see while working on this project is that all of those things are someone's daily life. So, daily landscape of Seoul is not only a landscape that we see on a daily basis, but also a landscape created by someone's daily life. So the Korean style urban landscape, like this picture, may be someone's daily life vomited by insufficient urban infrastructure and society. So what should I do? What should I do? I don't know, but let's look them with our eyes first, exactly with your heart. Thank you.
The typology that I'm going to talk about is the subway. I will show you how the functions of subway changed over times, which typologically read as just an infrastructure before. Subway had a clear functions as typologically. Transportation, especially subway, has features which are fast without any traffic congestion, informative screens, escalators, line maps, signs that show where to get out, and different colors by the lines are support the speedy system. All of them exist to provide more logistical infrastructure to people efficiently. Public spaces are fundamental elements of the city, but currently, especially in Seoul, public spaces are insufficient that compared with people who live and work in the city. So unused and misused spaces in subway is targeted for public spaces. Because of the better accessibility, these spaces are stuffed with not only the public spaces, but also the commercial spaces. It makes subways of different structure, not just only focusing on efficiency. So subway becoming less logistical. So now it has an appearance with exceeding the original functions. Stores, cafes, indoor green spaces, exhibitions, columns that wrapped with advertisements, even the metro farms and metro libraries are now coexistence with the original functions. These mutated spaces are encountered with majority of people for the characteristics of the public space. In many cases, these facilities are with colored and bright lights that emphasize the space, which can grab the pedestrian's attention. Those crowded public spaces are the best site to casually show that we are keeping up with social trends, which are acted soft propaganda. It also means that often seemed empty spaces has possibilities for the next propaganda by the tendency of the society. But these phenomena didn't emerge in recently. In former days, some walls and columns are attached with commercial advertisements and public campaign signs. The multiple ideologies will exist in infrastructure gradually, not for sudden. Accommodate a lot of people, durable, fast transporting, etc. Basically, these original infrastructure layers are exist logistically in all ways. At the same time, there's something appeared in space subconsciously, which are delicately permitted to us as ideologically like those soft lightings. So I expect the possibilities of that infrastructure which coexist with the multiple ideologies variably. There is no sole ideology. Subway being the space that represents the multiple ideologies of not only just the government, but also for the public. Thanks for listening.
Wow. I apologize. We should have never trusted students to present under 3 minutes. Now we understand why Sumin and June insisted on delegating the presentation to tutors, and never trust students. But yeah, nevertheless, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Jaewon.
Yes, thank you very much. I feel like I watched one short documentary film now, and a little bit boring, but yes. And I think I really appreciate what you guys got from the city, especially Seoul, which is very interesting typology or some element or object from the city, and then expand the topic as a architectural discourse. So it is the variable, in a sense, how you expose the quality of each elemental typological things. And then I really enjoy some counter typological, some collage as well. So yes, in a way, but I have one question. For all presentations, so you just draw some collage as a final product. So I wish to show a little bit more about plan or sectional thinking in order to deliver some more provocative thinking. So why you don't draw or why you don't produce those things? Is it because of the time or because of some strategical idea for the whole unit?
I mean, NA, do you want to respond to this? Because you thought it's not cool to have planned.
No, I mean, I think, of course, drawings and architecture language helps us to get an idea and understanding of the space as an architect. But I mean, first of all, of course, it was a time issue that we also thought of, but it was more about the way to tackle the questions, issues that we see around us is based on our perceptions, not through the architectural language. And of course, that was the kind of fundamental initial observations that we initiated and started our observation first. And then once the understanding is kind of in the place, and then we can start to think as an architect. But for us, that was the later stage. Of course, we thought of 7 days of workshop. What was more important was to get an idea and really critical thinking of what you see around us and the surrounding the city. And that what we really focus on this process first. And of course, by the time that we developed and then discussed about what we do, we thought and we saw as an architect thinking of space between plan and sections. But as you saw on our presentation, we thought it's more powerful to deliver what we found and what we understood through the image mainly. And I think that was more clear without any distractions that we normally have when we're doing a project as an architect.
Yeah, I guess I'm seeing an early part of your research. Yeah, and maybe you're looking at a series of workshops under the same topic, maybe in a longer period of time. Yeah, so really appreciate all the study and the research and really trying to understand how these very focused topic of spaces are mutated by different usage and people, I think, really interesting observation. Yeah, I'm sure that I think you as a tutor strategically really focus the workshop into research aspect. This is understandable and very appreciated, but cannot keep on questioning how these kind of data sets are going to be utilized or how this analysis are going to affect the decision making and the further spatial organization or urban planning or whatsoever. How is this going to be utilized? This probably is another question, and I'm sure you didn't really focus on that in this workshop particularly, I think, which is really fair. Yeah, understandable. Yeah, but maybe do you have maybe a reference or a example as an answer? How do you foresee this can be more useful also for students' sake and in their own development in their future projects or future research, or if you have any reference or example that you can just give us a hint?
I mean, a week is simply not enough. And we we do, what you just suggested, with probably a year long project at TAA. So I mean, I guess all the student works could be a really good reference. But even, I mean, we actually had this interesting discussion when Junkyu applied to the unit, and we had this small talk about so okay, I mean, after this obtaining the proposition, like what do we do? I mean, as an outcome, like, I mean, at that time we were also kind of struggling whether it's powerful enough. But I think once you have the new pair of eyes with the critical view, I mean, you see the city in a totally different way. And, and actually you can imagine using the city in a different way and how it was formed. But even without, I mean, basically, I think we believe in this strong observer's view, and observation is a really hard work. Also, it's like people often think that it doesn't really require much of a time or energy, but that's absolutely not true. So I think having the proposition, it's probably as important or even more important sometimes than like manifesting a design project. So I mean, if
yeah, that's totally agreeable. Yeah, it's really true. Yeah, and I think that's why I appreciate that. And maybe just from a curiosity, if because this is a workshop format, yeah, and it's probably happening like only once a year, and if this can be a continuous format. Is there a way to maybe continue some of this observation into some next level study maybe next year? Yeah, and is that going to be kind of interesting project developed? So there is a way that we don't repeat always as a observation mode, but we have maybe next year you do something else, or like do a next level of research or next level of design process. I don't know. I'm just curious. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, we're curious too, and unfortunately, you're not gonna like our answer. It's gonna be observation again.
Okay.
And also, can I probably good point.
Sorry, just one last thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is like a different phasing that we're also thinking that there are already very active agents who are forming alternative spaces, like new collective housings that's coming out from Seoul, which is totally unexpected. And observing them is already very like revealing, and making this kind of scenes more accessible. I think it's also a very important architectural role that people are not really aware of. So I mean, again, a lot to explore on the observation part, and then we can also think about the design implication part. But maybe it requires longer period of time for this workshop.
I think observation is really important. Also, observation is really powerful if we are doing something, we're making some argument out of that, not just illustration. So I think unit one I consider in the unit one, for the unit one, I consider some kind of borderline between observation and proposal, actually, because our observation resonating arguments and how to look at the city, especially so. So I think in a way, observation is very important how to rebuild the urban situation, already have an answer actually, I think. So in a way, I have been trying to make our agenda actually last 3 or 4 years as unit 1. Observation is much, I would like to put a more spotlight on the observation. And I think in a way, as a workshop, it is one of the valuable things. So if we are observing as a just illustration, it doesn't really mean, but in a way, but what they do here, I think observation is not just observation. So maybe I think observation is I don't know exactly, but it's difficult to say, but it's kind of slightly equal to maybe producing by machine learning as a unit 4, I think, because those are different types of exercising or collecting or some making argument based on what we are thinking as architectural field, different architectural background. So I think I don't want to make some dual level things, but I think for the algorithmic thinking, maybe producing is much more important than I think just observation. But as on my side, I think looking at the city, discovering the city, finding something for the city, we are much more important than how to define, how to make some argument from the observation is much more important, I think. So maybe we can discuss a little bit more of those things maybe in October, I think.
I think it's not that black and white, to be honest. Yeah, because yeah, it's different ways of doing things. Yeah, and also of course, collecting valuable.
One thing that
meaningful amount of kind of background analysis is absolutely important for anything. Yeah, and it is also it's not really like just black and white. It's algorithmic approach or not. Yeah, but I think the maybe the question is how do you maybe as a workshop format, maybe it's probably a little bit more about curriculum setup. So in a very short amount of time, do you wanna maybe try out, even if it's really fast and might be very naive? Do you wanna try out a huge like loop of the entire process, or do you wanna from a very big strand of the work process pipeline, do you want to just pick and choose one aspect and really focus on that? I think it's a focus on curriculum and it's choice of different tutors and agenda, I guess.
Going back to the design question, I forgot to mention one thing that's kind of important, and I also hope our students to take away from this course is that actually, like you don't build things or design things out of scratch anyway. Like you always observe things and extract and amplify. And I think through these observation and kind of zooming into particular elements that you like for multiple reasons, aspects. I mean, you can easily imagine that as part of your project anyway, proposal. So if we can understand that as like a small part of the proposal that can easily be redistributed or modified and amplified, I think, then I guess, observation itself is also designing.
And it's for me, in this project, the most amazing scene, my English is not good anyway, was I didn't know what to do first day, second day, third day, even fourth day. I don't know what I should focus something because we made atlas, we made some analyze, but I just see and see before analyze. I think that was the most important point. Before analyze, before something think I want to analyze something. No, before that, just see and see. and we can find something. My atlas is made like that. I never thought about the infrastructure with some manufactured goods. I never thought about it. I just pick and pick and pick, just see and see. Oh, they have something same is repetitive. So it was really amazing because we don't have many chance to just observe, because we should have project. Even if we have wrong time, even if it's a big project or wrong project, we always make something. So just observation, I want to pick, and before observation, I have to think and just pick and just put it there.
Yeah, Jungkook, I think it was a really good exercise you did. Yeah. But I also want to say that I really appreciate that how you were putting these yellow small chairs around city. Yeah, and tying up, and you are like making joke about if it's illegal, if you are going to be caught, you know. Those are really interesting provocation that you really tried and act on your observation. Yeah, so I think that kind of act is something we are also interested in looking. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you. And also that project was same. I didn't thought what should I do. I just brought my chair and left. So that's what I say.
That's really interesting that you mix up your observation and your act and being provocative on doing something. And it's everything's valid. Yeah. So great exercise you guys did.
I mean, I hope the students don't misunderstand, because we are not saying that this is not valid, but the only thing that we are discussing here is I know I totally agree with James that observation is extremely important, but I also think the observation needs to be followed by the analysis, a proper architectural analysis, in order to make a meaningful sort of impact towards our, I don't know what would be the next step, but some sort of proposal. So I hope the students can understand a little bit that your the last final image of the collage is not a proposal, but just like what if kind of just gesture, or maybe a let's say displacement, so that you can understand that situation even better. So I mean, I don't want to wrap up this discussion. I think we have to continue this in October, but in my personal opinion, I think even if the workshop is short, I wish we would have some sort of analysis after the observation. But for Korean students specifically, because we know how short we always spend for research or to get the concept, etc., I know how valuable this exercise would have been. So I really appreciate, because I think just because most of our attendants are the Korean students who had to sort of wrap up the project, a project from the research to the proposal and render within like less than 3 months, like less than 2 months even. So I hope that this became sort of a big chance for you guys to understand how important how important it is to have that kind of eyes to look at the city and to see the details of the city elements.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting conversation between us. Maybe it really was. I mean, I'll be really short. I think just one thing that I don't think is only observation. Observation when you're on site and see around you, that's the observation. But by the time that you come back to your workshop with space and see the photos of what you took, then it's about making decisions. I mean, by the time you put an atlas, that is already designing. And doing a project and doing a designing is really fundamentally about the process making decisions. And in that sense, I don't think it's only observation, first of all. And I fully appreciate your discussion because I understand why this kind of debate is coming out. And yeah, of course, we understand the expectations that you said. I mean, even John and myself and James was thinking of more than what we've done this time when we were planning this course, but we kind of had to compromise at some point. But for us, doing a project was making decision, and we tried to allow students to experience and know what's the fundamentals of the process. So in that sense, goes beyond the observations and then making their own understanding. I'll just stop there.
I think what this Unit 1 has done is pretty, I mean, it has got something in common with the Unit 1 in our phase 1, the J1 and the Jinsak has led, because for the last 4 or 5 years, the Unit 1 has done this direct action on site, which a student had to go out to the site and then find the elements and find the social structures, etc., by themselves. But there is something in common, but I think the reason why it took a time for me to understand this year's curriculum and the meaning is on the screen when you present. I was once asking, I think it was quite recent, that asking NA that are these photos taken by the students themselves or just collated some images that found on the internet. I think if the students has sort of shown off their sort of effort, that they went out and to find the elements by themselves and then all sort of like share their experience a little bit more with us, I think that would have been better, because the narrative didn't, I think there's a room for improvement, that we can sort of understand the narrative a little bit better compared to the, not compare, I'm not going to compare, but on the second day that we had this AA students presentation, James students, it was really nice to see those narrative drawings, because I think with all those drawings, that narrative has come to me. That's how I felt. But of course, it's impossible to do that kind of a drawings within 9 days or 7 days. But if we can probably try out something that we can get the story across to the audience, probably it will be better. But anyway, I mean, after I found that the students had to go out and then in this hot weather and then found all those elements together to make that atlas, I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was also amazed by your presentation. Yeah, everybody was speaking really good English. Yeah, or you had prepared very well scripts. Yeah, so very well done. Yeah, I think we are passing 3 hours now, so just wanna see if we can slowly wrap up the session and the workshop. Yeah, and I really want to invite every single person in this room to join us on 16th of October. More detailed announcement will be sent to you via email, and stay tuned on the chat. But yeah, our conversation from today will continue then. Yeah, and we are going to very much welcome for any students to show us your developed version of your project, or however you used the knowledge or learning in your own world, for example. Yeah, so yeah, we would be very, very welcome for any kind of continuous studies and continuous learning experience that you guys show us. For example, last year we had one unit student that we didn't ask, but they applied their project to an exhibition and it was exhibited. So we really encourage that kind of activities. Yeah. So we also had a unit develop their project with their tutors, and they wrote a conference paper. Yeah, and if you do any exercise or any productions after this workshop until that point of 16th October, please do let us know, and we will give you a slot to present your work. Yeah, we really appreciate everybody's, and please do the survey. We will have to send you your transcript with your full detail. So we need you to fill out the form that we just sent you. And please stay tuned for our not promotion, but our emails for events and further details about the recording sharings and everything, and further announcements. Yeah, Jun, Hanjun, Seunga, do you have anything to say? Did I miss anything?
I'm good.
Just
All right.
many thanks.
Yeah, many thanks for everybody. Yeah, and can I maybe ask for some closing comments? But we will see each other on 16th October. Yeah, please join us.
For tutors, I really appreciate, and because it was sort of a challenge for us as well to invite new tutors to set up this platform for discussion, and I think it was really successful. And I look forward to having more interesting debates and discussions for all our experimental workshops. Also for students, don't forget that how much you could achieve within 9 days. So if you work like this for the rest of the year, I'm sure imagine how much you can do. So don't forget this feeling.
Yeah.
Congratulations, everyone.
Yeah, and we always love discussions, debates. It's not a fight. Yeah, it's for us to grow. Yeah, so yeah, let's keep on challenging each other. Yeah, and we'll see each other on 16th October. Yeah, looking forward to your development. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.